Hello everyone, StormyStrike here, and welcome to my first ever Q&A video, which is kind of surprising that it's my first because I've been wanting to do a Q&A video on YouTube for such a long time. And I even planned one out once or twice, but I just never actually got around to doing it. Well, now, no more waiting around. I asked you guys on Instagram, Facebook, and here on YouTube in a community post to send me questions, and boy did you all deliver. I ended up sorting all of these questions into different sections and subsections to keep similar types of questions together. These sections or categories are model horses, which unsurprisingly has so many questions I had to divide it up into even subcategories. Those subcategories are specific models, like talking about favorites and least favorites and grails and things like that. Next is the model horse hobby subcategory. This is for all the questions that are about the model horse hobby or about collecting in general. And then there is the BreyerFest subcategory, which is for any and all BreyerFest related questions. Then there's the category of in real life horses. This is for all the questions that are about horses in real life that aren't specific to just model horses. And then lastly is just all other questions. This is a catch-all for any non-horse related questions that were asked. There are a lot of questions and I don't want to make this video crazy long if I can help it, so let's get right to it. Starting off with model horse questions about specific models. Do you collect any of the other Breyer animals? Yes, I collect quite a lot of them. I have several bulls, dogs, elk, bison, goats, and other fun Breyer critters. Do you have any models from more unique brands that aren't seen on social media very often? I do. I have, I think, 3 North Light horses, which I personally really like, a Sandy Cast horse, some Trail of the Painted Ponies models, and then some more obscure ones like a Stone Critters Pegasus. If you could only collect one Breyer or Peter Stone scale, what would it be? Definitely traditional. Which do you prefer, Stone or Breyer? Breyer for sure, and I could go into like a whole explanation on why I choose Breyer, but it would probably take me way too long to go over in this video, so I'll save that for another video another day. If you were to do a design a horse by Stone Horses, what would it look like? Ideally, probably another Shark Week design a horse, but if we're talking more about what they have available most of the year or right now, then some kind of splash pinto. I'm not entirely sure what color beyond that. It seems they don't really have many mold options available right now, so I'm just gonna go with the Irish Draft Stallion mold. If you won a design your own Breyer, what would it be? I've been asked this before, and it's a tough question for me. I guess I'll say I'd get the design of my new Horsona character, but I'm actually still working on that design, so I don't really have a picture of the final design to share with you guys yet. But whatever the final design will be, I want that on the Firefly mold. If you could design a model horse, what would they look like, such as breed, color, markings, pose, etc.? I'd let this be a separate question since it's kind of just model horse in general and not specifically Breyer or Stone. And I'm going to go ahead and focus on the idea of creating a brand new mold. If I were to design a model horse from scratch, I'd make it a traditional scale fantasy carousel horse, because why not? I think I'd probably want to do a hippocampus carousel horse with beautiful metallic purple and blue paint. What is your ultimate grail? Probably Everglades from the 2011 Sunshine Celebration. What was your very first model? I had several models when I was a toddler, and I have no idea if I actually had like a single first model, so I usually say the original Black Foundation Stallion and Palomino Western Prancer. What's your favorite and least favorite mold? My favorite mold is the Foundation Stallion, mostly because of sentimental reasons, but I also think it's just a beautiful underrated mold. My least favorite is a little bit more difficult to figure out because there's a few of them, but I'm going to go with the Midnight Sun mold for the fact it is portraying a movement akin to the Big Lick, and I also think it's just such a shame that the mold could have had better potential. From what I've heard, the actual Midnight Sun horse was not a Big Lick Tennessee walking horse, and if the portrait of him had been sculpted based on him doing natural movements, like in this photo, he would have probably been a more enjoyed mold and maybe even still be produced by Breyer today. I also do want to give a least favorite honorable mention to the Laredo mold. I just think it's so wonky and such a strange concept for Breyer to change the legs on a mold to a completely different breed type. Do you have a least favorite model? There could probably be a few models I could say are my least favorite, but the one that always comes to mind for me is Prince of Chintz, a BreyerFest 2012 special run. I would actually probably quite like him if he was just plain Wedgwood blue, but I really don't like the flowers that are on him. If you could only collect one mold, what would it be? Since I already answered my favorite mold being the Foundation Stallion, I would almost say it again for this question, but let's mix it up a bit and say my second favorite mold, Ethereal. If you have a mini conga of certain molds, which model of said conga or congas are or is your favorite? I'm not sure what the specific definition of a mini conga in this case would be, but I'm gonna say having 3 or 4 models on a mold, because 3 is the minimum for a conga, and I feel like once you start getting into 5 or more, it's not really considered a very small conga anymore. It is a bit of a challenge for me to think of molds I have a mini conga of, simply because I can't see all of the ones that I have out right now. So I went to Identify Your Breyer to try and figure out some. I believe I have 4 models on the Missouri Foxtrotter mold, and of those, Purette is my favorite. I have 3 on the Desatado mold, and of them, Maelstrom is my favorite. I think I also have 3 on the Andalusian Mare mold, and of those, Boudica would be my favorite. I surely have some more mini congas, especially of other scales, but it would take me way too long to try and go through all of them and figure them out, so I'll just leave it at those 3. Side note, this is also an interesting method I might use to help me with downsizing my collection. I think I'm even going to make a short video at some point soon talking about my active process of downsizing my collection. What's your favorite classic mold? My favorite classic mold is Misteño. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right because I looked it up. What is your favorite model horse of all time? This is a question I've gotten a lot, and it is like a next to impossible question for me to answer. At one point, I actually even started writing a video script about me trying to figure out what my all-time favorite model would be. I wrote down like a bunch of favorite models, and even then, I really couldn't narrow it down to just one. However, I've noticed that whenever I try to think of what my favorite model or models are, one that often comes up in my mind is Kimbia. So, you know, what the heck, let's say, at least for this video, that my favorite model is Kimbia. The reason for it is I just think he is super cool. I love the fact that he is colored after another animal. His markings, coloring, everything is just so cool. Also, he's, I guess, kind of becoming sentimental at this point because I've had him for quite a long time, and my mom actually helped me buy him, and I don't know, I just have a lot of love for him. What are your top 3 favorite model horses in your collection, and do you have any favorite models? Again, this is incredibly hard for me to pick out my top favorite models. This may not be totally accurate, but let's say for my top 3, Kimbia, again, since I set him as my number 1, Water, and Capella. I'll go ahead and also list off some other favorites too, cause why not? In no particular order, Conquistador, Fire, Nanoma, the Zombie Horse custom Foundation Stallion I have, Pollock, Grand Cavallo, Nirvana, my Peter Stone Design a Horse Shark Week model, Spirit and Rain, Kalahari, and then there's like 2 or 3 models I might also add, but they are in parts of the collection unboxing series that have not come out yet, so I'm going to refrain from revealing what those ones are yet, that you will eventually see those models as well in that series. And again, I could probably just go on and on listing like tons of favorite models for me, but I will stop there. If you could keep only one model, which model would it be and why? And also, what model means the most to you? I decided to combine these questions because I think if I could only keep one model, it would be the one that means the most to me. This is again super difficult, and I don't even know if my answer is fully accurate, but I decided I'm gonna go with Ethereal Water. I know it would seem like I would say Kimbia as I listed him as my top favorite for now, but Water is probably the model that means the most to me overall. He meant a lot to me in my early YouTube days since he was the main character in my model horse series Crystal Sins. He is just a beautiful model overall, very photogenic. I just have a lot of love for this model, a lot of nostalgia attached to him as well. It is also hard not to put a Foundation Stallion model in this prompt as well, because my original black Foundation Stallion, who has since been technically customized and is technically also a bloaty and stuff, in a way I really like him as well. It is just hard, guys. I got too many models that I love and have like a lot of different meaning and nostalgia attached to, and there's also just so many that are just so beautiful and hard not to want to look at a lot. Continuing on the favorites train, what's your all-time favorite regular run? I'd probably have to say either Capella or Waters since I put them in my top 3. They are both considered limited editions, but they are still technically considered regular runs, I believe. If you aren't satisfied with that answer, then perhaps I'd go with this Classic Spirit model. Who is your favorite Breyer 2023 regular run release? I'm going to assume you just mean the ones that they've shown so far. And I'd say either the 2023 Carousel Ornament or the Fjord Sweetwaters Zora Bell. What's your favorite Halloween Breyer? This is a tough one, but I think I'm going to have to go with Apparition. What is a model you regret buying and a model you wish you had gotten but didn't? I have a few models that I've regretted buying over the years, but I have since already sold a lot of models that immediately come to mind. So I'd like to come up with a more recent model that I still have. I think I'd have to say I regret some of the things I bought in the last Collector Club appreciation I did back in December 2020. Like I bought an extra Winx and an extra KB Omega to customize, but I already don't have the time and energy to finish any of the dozens of bodies I already have to customize, so I really shouldn't have bought them and regret buying them. There's definitely been quite a few models I regret not getting. There's been some at Breyer swap meets in the past, like a Mirror Image and Reflector years ago that were a great price, a Tatanka White Bison at a different model horse swap meet years ago, and then more recently at BreyerFest 2022, there's a Peter Stone I wish I would have gotten, and I also wish I would have picked up a Matte Decorator 7 Art Surprise. They were both not like super cheap models, which is why I didn't get them and then kind of regretted not getting them. What is the most expensive model in your collection? This question depends on if you mean most expensive I've ever bought or most valuable model I own. The most expensive model I ever bought was Baruti in 2021 for $350. The most valuable model I have currently would be the Splash Pinto Diana, whose value is somewhere around $3,000 based on the couple that I've sold in the past. What is the cheapest model in your collection? I technically have quite a handful of models that would be considered my cheapest model because I got them for free. On a couple of occasions, I've had people that weren't really collectors give me some of their models that they were getting rid of. They knew I collected Breyers, so they were just like, "Here, take them." And I would be like, "Are you sure? I'd pay you for these." And they were like, "Nah, you can just have them," which is really nice and generous of them. What are your rarest models in your collection? I'm not going to include Peter Stones for this. I'm just going to talk about Breyers because I'm not even sure what my rarest Peter Stone models would technically be right now. But for Breyers, I'll give my top 5 rarest. My number 1 rarest is Win, Place, or Show, a 1 of 28 model, which was the Diorama Contest Prize for BreyerFest 2018. The Splash Pinto Diana, who I already talked a bit about, which there are only 30 made of, which was done for BreyerFest 2019. My third rarest is actually a tie between 2 models, so I'll just go ahead and list them both, which is Glossy Simba from BreyerFest 2015. I won him in the costume contest then. And then Olympia from the 2020 Seattle Soiree. Both models, there were only 40 made of each. My fourth rarest model is Duwamish, also from the Seattle Soiree with only 48 made. And then my fifth rarest is Coral Sea from the True Blue 2021 event with only 60 made. What is your smallest model? What is your largest model? My smallest model is probably a Breyer Mini Winnie foal, and then my largest model would be a Mark's horse. I used to have those big R generation horses as well, which are even bigger than this guy, but I think I got rid of all of them. What are your thoughts about the Schleich Horse Club magazine exclusive foals? I didn't even know about these honestly until this question, so I looked them up, and they're alright. I find it a little odd that one of the foals has braids in its mane. I don't think people usually braid foals' manes, but maybe I'm wrong. And the black one looks to be pretty much the same as an older foal model I actually might already have. These models are cute, but they don't look like anything I'd want to buy. On to the model horse hobby category. What got you into model horses? Technically, it was just my love of horses in general that got me into it, as I started collecting Schleichs, Breyer Mini Winnies, and some off-brand models at the same time that I really got into horses. As for the model horse hobby, what got me into that was actually model horse films and videos on YouTube. How long have you been in the hobby? I've been in the hobby since roughly around 2010, maybe a little earlier than that. So I've been in the hobby for about 13 years or so. Do you ever feel embarrassed about being into model horses when it's something a lot of people might not understand or think it's for children? I actually haven't really ever been embarrassed about collecting model horses as far as I can remember. I especially don't really feel embarrassed about it these days because everybody does or collects weird things that someone else might not understand. And if someone else has a problem with it, then whatever, that's on them. Perhaps the closest I've got to being embarrassed about it more recently was telling my boyfriend on our first date that I collect model horses, but even then, it's not like I was embarrassed about it. It was more just like, hey, there's this weird thing I'm really into that you should probably know about, but I hope it doesn't scare you off immediately. It didn't scare him off, so it's all good. How has the model horse hobby affected your friendships/relationships? I'm going to take this question as how it's affected relationships with people that aren't into model horses, and honestly, it hasn't really affected anything in a major way. My friends, family, and boyfriend know that I like model horses, and they are all cool with it, and that's about it. My parents have always been super supportive of it, and yeah, I just don't really have much to say, as I feel like there wasn't really any noteworthy impacts of them on my relationships. Have you made any long-lasting friendships? Definitely. I even still have some friends back from when I very first started collecting. How has being in the hobby affected your life through the years? This is one of those questions where it's like, where do I even begin? Being in the hobby and collecting model horses has affected a lot of different things for me through the years. YouTube is a big, obvious one. While I started YouTube because of AMVs or animated music videos, my YouTube quickly became more about model horses, and obviously to this day it is still a lot about model horses. And since YouTube has become one of my jobs, it is pretty crazy that model horses have basically in a way given me a job. Not only that, but it was model horse movies and series on YouTube that add to my desire to want to make my own videos and films and such, and fueled me on to go to college for film. And funny enough, the narrative film program I actually got into via doing a little model horse video. There's also just other things like customizing has affected me artistically by trying out mediums I might not have done much otherwise, like airbrushing and sculpting, and then just painting a 3D object as well. I might have mostly stuck to 2D art otherwise. And of course, there is all the different friends and amazing hobby people I've met that have affected my life in some way over the years. There is just so much that the hobby has affected my life because so much of my life has been about the hobby these past many years. What is your favorite thing about the hobby, and what is your least favorite thing about the hobby? I think my favorite thing is just how creative it is. And I don't mean that in the sense of just customizing, but in general. There's tack making, photography, just the ideas people come up with. I tend to gravitate towards hobbies that foster a lot of creativity, and I think the model horse hobby does that pretty well. Coming up with my least favorite thing is a little tough, as there isn't a whole lot I dislike about the hobby. I am getting tired, however, of seeing how often people complain about little tiny flaws they find on Breyer models, or any models really. I totally understand complaining about major flaws, but the complaints about the tiny ones gets old real fast for me. There's this mentality of perfectionism lately that seems to be floating around, and that's what I'm going to say is my least favorite thing about the hobby right now. It's okay if things aren't perfect. You can still show an OF Breyer if it has a few little factory flaws. If you're painting or sculpting a model, it's okay if it's not completely perfect or accurate or realistic. Just, have fun with things. Don't worry about everything being perfect. What would you say is your biggest accomplishment in your Breyer collecting history? This is a question that could almost be lumped in with the question I'm going to answer next, but I'm going to go ahead with a different answer and say getting to write an article in the Breyer 2020 JH magazine. That felt like a pretty big accomplishment. What is your proudest model horse hobby moment? This is a really good but also really tough question because I could pick so many different things, but I think I'm going to have to go with the time during earlier days of the model horse YouTube community when I made a trailer for a model horse movie trailer contest hosted by Ranch Girl 8888, and it got first place in the contest, and it also got like 3,000 views at the time, which was a huge deal back then. I was so shocked how much people liked that trailer, and that trailer is what ended up sparking the creation of my Crystal Sin series and further added to my drive to pursue filmmaking. So I'm going to say that is probably my proudest hobby moment, was making that trailer and it being received so well. How has being in the community changed as you've gotten older? I hope I am interpreting this question correctly, but being in the community now is extremely different from when I started. I started out in the community on YouTube and it felt a lot smaller and just had this whole other vibe to it. The community now, I feel like I'm more spread out in. I'm not just in YouTube like I was, but I'm also on Facebook and Instagram a lot. Instagram wasn't even around yet when I first joined the hobby, which, wow. The community as a whole has gotten a lot bigger and feels different now than before. Not different in a bad way, it's just different. Of course, I interacted and felt about the hobby differently from a child's perspective too, because when I first started out, I was still a kid. Over a decade later, things have just changed, of course. One change in the community I find funny is how it used to be that when the news of Breyer coming out with new models, I wouldn't really hear or know about it unless someone had posted a video on YouTube showing the new models. These days, when there's even a hint of a new model being shown, everyone's instantly posting and talking about it all over social media, and it's generally kind of hard to miss. Again, I probably could come up with a lot more differences in how the community is now versus back then, but that would probably take me a long time to go over everything, so we'll just leave it at that. How have/did you balance the model horse community, specifically customizing, and college life? Honestly, I don't really have an answer for this because I did not move away to go to college. I've been living in the same house for all of the schooling I've ever had, and college honestly was not a huge change for me compared to high school. I can't recall any time where I felt like I was really struggling to balance the model horse community and customizing with other life things. I just did it when I had time, and if I didn't have time or just didn't feel like it, then I just wouldn't do it and would come back to it later. So I'm sorry, this answer couldn't be more helpful. Can you recommend ways to stay active in the model horse community when a collector is away at college? Again, same thing. I didn't go away to college, so I don't have any of that kind of life experience. I'll still give some ideas though, like just checking up on model horse social media every so often, staying in touch with hobby friends, especially if you have anyone local to the area that you can maybe meet up with or something sometimes. What is your favorite piece of tack you have made? I'm not entirely sure, but maybe the rainbow beaded rope halters I've made to sell before. They aren't like this super crazy detailed thing, but I think they are really pretty and fun. Will you ever make another Breyer series? Probably not. The only series I will possibly make again is Crystal Sins. I may do some sort of short model horse films in the future, but I don't plan to ever do another series except for Crystal Sins because it is just way too much work. Who inspired you to make model horse movies? I don't actually remember now. I know Cinema Mew Mew was probably one of my biggest inspirations, but I don't remember if I started watching their videos before or after I wanted to start making model horse movies. Ranch Girl 8888 who I mentioned earlier, was probably definitely one of the people that inspired me, along with Mouse Nose and surely other creators, but it's just been so long now that I really can't remember. Are you participating in NAMO this year? NAMO is in reference to NaMoPaMo, or National Model Horse Painting Month, in which you challenge yourself to paint a model start to finish in the month of February. However, NaMoPaMo is being changed this year to International Model Horse Painting Party, and it's going to work a little differently. As of recording this, there still hasn't been full details on the exact changes yet, and I'm not sure if I will be doing it or not this year. I do have a model that is all prepped and ready to go if I do decide to do it, but I have so much going on right now that I don't think I'm going to have the time and energy for it this year. How do you find all the hauls? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by this, because the hauls I post just means I'm showing all the models I got from either a specific event or then a specific time period. Like my BreyerFest haul just means I'm showing all the models I got over the course of BreyerFest from different people. It's not like the models I buy usually all come together in a lot, except for the collection I purchased last year, which was probably kind of a one-time thing. Perhaps the next question here will also answer this one, which is, where do you buy your models? I've bought models from all kinds of places over the years. I've bought them from Breyer directly, from online Breyer dealers, from in-person Breyer retailers, from thrift stores, antique malls, swap meets, model horse swap meets, Target and Walmart when they used to sell Breyers where I live, from friends, from Facebook, Instagram, model horse sales pages, eBay, BreyerWest, and BreyerFest. Where do you sell the models that you don't keep? It depends. I've sold at local model horse swap meets before. I've sold at BreyerFest, on eBay, Facebook, Instagram, and kind of on model horse sales pages. I'll most likely be selling a lot more models soon on eBay and maybe Mercari. I have not used Mercari yet, so I'm not sure if I will be doing that or not. While eBay does have its downsides with fees, personally, I find selling on social media to be such a hassle compared to rather posting on somewhere like eBay or Mercari. I do really like selling in person, but there's just unfortunately not a lot of opportunities to do that, and that in itself can have its own hassles. I've had several people ask this same question, which is, how many models do you have? The truth is, I have no idea. I'd give the rough estimate of around 3,000 if I'm counting all sizes and brands of models. Breyers would make up the majority of the models I do own. I am, however, hoping to cut down the amount of models I currently have, whatever number it may be, by about half or so. While I like all the models I have, honestly having this many of them is just not fun in some ways because I really can't enjoy them all. And eventually, when I do get to the point where I'm happy with the amount I've downsized on my collection, I'll be able to count out all the models and give a more specific number. How do you store your models? I store them in cardboard boxes or plastic tubs. Apparently, cardboard boxes are better for them because of airflow, supposedly. And then I have my models wrapped up in all kinds of different material like cloth, bubble wrap, paper, foam, pouches. You just have to make sure to be careful when wrapping models in any kind of fabric because it can stain them. I've had that happen a few times and it's not fun. How much did you pay for the collection you bought that was Judy's? I won't give an exact number, but let's just say I was glad that I had a good amount of money already saved up before that opportunity unexpectedly came up. Before you got the big collection you have now, you bought your first one. What was it and do you still have it? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by this question. The collection I bought in 2021 was the first time I bought like an almost entire collection at once. My collection beforehand was and is just the collection of models I've built up over the years. How do you display your collection in your home? I don't. Not really anyway. I do have some shelves up in my room which models are on, but they look horrible. The majority of my collection is actually packed away in boxes, so it's kind of really not displayed right now. Would you ever do a collection tour? Yes, absolutely. Someday I would love to do a collection tour when I actually have my collection all displayed and out so I can do a collection tour. On to BreyerFest related questions. When was your first BreyerFest and what was your impression? My first BreyerFest was in 2011. I flew there with my mom and I had a great time. It was overwhelming, but a blast. I do wish I would have known more about it before going, but information about BreyerFest back then wasn't as widespread and easily accessible and detailed online like it is today. Have you ever been to the InPod bright and early Friday morning? No, I have never been to InPod or the Ninja Pit of Death, aka the Breyer store, very first thing in the morning on Friday. And honestly, I don't think I ever will do it, considering there are apparently not as many amazing finds anymore, and the hours people have to wait in line to get whatever is good there is just not worth it to me. BreyerFest is already an exhausting trip, and I don't want to make it even more exhausting by waking up extremely early for it. Part of me does wish, however, that I would have known about it back when I first attended BreyerFest in 2011, because I might have had the energy back then to do that, and back then there were still some pretty amazing things that people would find in the Breyer store then. What was your favorite BreyerFest moment, and why was it your favorite? It is hard to pick a favorite BreyerFest moment when there's been so many fun ones. I think I will go with the YouTube meet at BreyerFest 2011. At the time, the model horse filming community was still very active, and I was still filming my model horse series Crystal Sins. People were talking about each other's videos, and then even filming videos together with their models on the grassy hill. It was just a really fun and exciting time. What were your favorite and least favorite BreyerFest themes? I think my favorite theme is one I didn't attend, which was Lights Camera BreyerFest in 2010. I picked this theme because I just like the general Hollywood and movies idea, since I am a bit of a film nerd, and there were just some nice models overall that year too. My least favorite theme is probably Denim and Diamonds in 2013, which is yet another year I did not attend. While I do like some old western and country themed stuff, this theme seemed more about like modern glam kind of country, at least based on the name, and I'm just kind of not really into that theme. What was your favorite BreyerFest theme that you've been to? This is a tough one because my brain automatically wants to associate the theme with some of my actual experiences at BreyerFest, but I'm going to try and base this solely off of the theme alone. And in that case, I think I'm going to go with, again, 2011 Fairy Tales. I like that it was a very fantasy-based theme, and there were a lot of fun names for the models. I had a few people ask me the very fun question of what would my dream BreyerFest theme be, and what the models and surprise horse for it would look like. I love this question because there are so many possibilities. I am going to cheat a little and bring up more than just one theme because there are so many themes I'd like to see done. For example, a space or galaxy theme would be amazing. So many possibilities for cool special runs to be named after things like stars, constellations, planets, galaxies, space expeditions, etc. I'd love an ocean-themed BreyerFest because I love a lot of ocean-related stuff. So many fun ocean animals that models could be inspired after. Could also incorporate some fantasy, like having merpeople and sea monster-related things. I just want a whole ocean vibe, and maybe we can get something close to it someday, as I wouldn't be surprised if Breyer does some kind of tropical-themed BreyerFest in the future. If I were to pick a single theme as my dream theme to talk more in depth about though, I'd probably say a safari/zoo/exotic animal theme would just be amazing. Ideally, I'd love just a whole lineup of crazy animal-colored decorators like the Big Cat and Wild Animal series models, but bring in some other fun animal colors and patterns too, like from reptiles, amphibians, birds, and fish. I would just absolutely love that. Make almost every single model a decorator, throw in a few realistic colored models. Particularly, I'd like something with that nice champagne color Breyer does, and then put a splash pinto in there somewhere too. But for the most part, I would like to see just almost all fun, crazy colored animal decorators. Now, of course, Breyer would never make their entire special run lineup all decorator models, but this is a dream BreyerFest question after all, not a what I think Breyer would actually do question. So I'm going to continue in indulging in this dream BreyerFest theme. So for the surprise model, why not make it on the Foundation Stallion mold? Put a bunch of animal designs on him, do one as a dolphin, one as a parrot, one as a tree frog, one as a lizard, a fish, and so on. I don't know, just put a bunch of fun animal-inspired designs on him. As for other molds I'd like to see as special runs, I don't know exactly, but just I guess a bunch of molds I like Ethereal, Adios, Firefly, Animar, Constantina, Spirit and Rain, and Vermeer. Yeah, that's the gist of my dream BreyerFest theme and models. Just a bunch of fun, crazy, colored, animal-themed models would be amazing. What is your favorite BreyerFest celebration horse of all time? This is a really good question, and it's a tricky one because there's quite a few celebration models I really like, and I like them for different reasons. I think I'm gonna have to go with maybe Pecos from BreyerFest 2011. I'm sorry, so many of my answers are just BreyerFest 2011. I just think he is an absolutely beautiful model though. I love his pearly white. I like him for a lot of sentimental reasons. He was, again, from my first BreyerFest. And I plan to make him this really important character in my Crystal Sin series, but I don't think I ever actually really got around to being able to film him much. I remember him placing at one of my first few model horse shows, and there's just a lot for me to love about this guy. Roxy is probably a close second, as she also has a lot of sentiment attached to her, including the fact I was able to get her signed by Stacy Westfall. Will you be at BreyerFest 2023? Yes, I am planning to be there. What is your opinion on the newest sneak peek for BreyerFest? I don't even know what sneak peek was being referred to here, but whatever it was has already been revealed, as Breyer's been revealing their BreyerFest models very quickly after the sneak peeks. If you want to know my thoughts on the BreyerFest models in general though, I have released a video where I do just that and talk about my thoughts on all the BreyerFest models that have been revealed so far. What do you think this year's surprise model will be? And also, will you still be doing a surprise horse speculation video this year? Yes, I do plan to do a surprise horse speculation video again this year. On to the next category, talking about real life horses. Have you ever had people make fun of you for the model horse hobby / your love of horses? Not for model horses, but yes for real horses, which is why I included this question in this section of the video. There was a time in middle school when a group of boys bullied me for liking horses. I don't think they knew that I also liked model horses, which is probably why they didn't bully me about that too. Several people asked if I own a horse, take lessons, or work with horses in real life. I do not and have never owned a horse. I did used to take lessons, ride, and work with horses a lot, like every weekend. I do still see and ride horses sometimes, but it's not like it used to be where I would go every weekend. What got you into real horses? I've always liked horses for as long as I can remember. I especially loved Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron when that came out in 2002. I didn't start really getting into horses though until my mom had enrolled me in a horse camp for the first time in 2007, and that's when I got really into riding and working around real horses. What is your favorite horse breed? My favorite horse breed is quarter horses, mainly because that's the breed I've worked with and ridden the most, but I also just love them for the fact that they are so versatile. Do you have a favorite horse book? Unfortunately, not at this time, purely because I haven't really read any horse books in like a decade, and I can't really remember any of the ones I've read. The most recent that I started reading is actually the Star Stable books, and I have quite enjoyed what I've read of those so far. I honestly haven't been reading much in general lately. There's a lot of things I'd like to read and catch up on, and I just never get around to it, unfortunately. I did used to read dozens and dozens of horse books when I was in school. I read tons of different things like Canterwood Crest and different stories from the Pony Club. I do remember that I really liked the Phantom Stallion Wild Horse Island, but I can't remember anything about the actual book, so I'm sorry I can't really give a clear answer on this one because I just really can't remember any of the books I used to read. How many Star Stable horses do you have? I currently have 63 horses on Star Stable, which is hard for me to believe, honestly. I always feel like I don't have as many horses as I actually do. On to the last category of other non-horse related questions. What do you do for art? Can we see a couple of your artwork? Unsurprisingly, when it comes to art, I like to draw a lot of animals and fantasy creatures. I do both digital and traditional art. I've taken some breaks from doing a lot of art the past several years, but I've been getting back into drawing more often lately. I will show on screen some of my more recent pieces. I recently did a little avatar fan art, Star Stable fan art, a pet portrait. I will try to share any new horse-related art I do on my social media. Next question is flying or road trips? It depends. I really enjoy doing both, although I guess if I had to pick, probably road trips. Favorite food? Pasta. Favorite video game? This is one that changes depending on which game I've been playing a lot of recently. Like, if you asked me this question every 6 months, I'd probably have a different answer each time. Right now, I'd say that my favorite game is Played Up, which me and my boyfriend play a lot together and with friends, and it is just a really fun game. I would love to hear more about your interests and hobbies other than model horses. I have a lot of hobbies and interests besides model horses or even just horses. I collect a bunch of other things like animal figures and dinosaurs, Jurassic Park stuff, dragon stuff, enamel pins, Disneyland stuff, and just any random things that I really like. As already kind of mentioned, I like creating art and playing video games. Those are 2 other hobbies I have. I also like other creative outlets such as writing and needlework. I mostly do counted cross stitch, but I also do a bit of needlepoint and embroidery sometimes. I like learning about different kinds of nerdy things, especially when it comes to film analysis and theme park history. I used to be really big into watching TV shows and movies all the time. Unfortunately, I haven't been as big into watching stuff like I used to be, but I guess kind of a hobby too. Yeah, I just like a ton of different things, and I'm sure there's probably some interests and hobbies I missed mentioning on here. I'm also curious what career field you work in / are striving to work in, if outside of model horses and YouTube. For work, besides YouTube, right now I am also technically a vintage dealer, which was what my mom did. I am working to get rid of and sell off all of my mom's inventory, which is probably going to take me at least several more years. And honestly, I have no idea what I'll be doing after I eventually sell everything off. I don't know if I'm going to keep focusing on YouTube stuff or if I'll go into some other kind of field of work. I really have no idea, and right now I kind of just can't plan ahead for that because things may change for what I want to do by then. And that is all of the questions that were asked for this video. Because there were so many amazing questions, this video ended up taking me a lot longer to finish than I expected. I am glad to have finally done a Q&A video though, and maybe I'll do another one sometime in the future. Who knows? Were there any answers in this video that I gave that surprised you? Let me know in the comments, as I am curious if there was something I answered that wasn't what you expected. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye everyone!